Here's the first story for today. Congratulations, TCU's had their great run this year. They're going to the college football playoff semifinals. And today, their offensive coordinator, Garrett Riley, honored as the Broyles Award winner for the best assistant coach in college football. He wins the award. I saw Lincoln Riley reach out to him, or at least the award, and TCU on Twitter. And congratulations to Garrett Riley. There's some great names on this list. Not a surprise, though, that he was picked as the winner.
No, and he's going to be able to roll this into at least a raise, if not another job somewhere else. I mean, he's going to be in demand. But, you know, I'm sure TCU is going to buck up and do whatever they can to do to keep him. And I'm sure his name in the next couple of years will be in head coaching searches all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, very deserving. You know, they did a great job offensively to maximize the talent that they had. And, you know, the thing about TCU is they were very veteran-laden. You know, there's questions about, like, for example, I had somebody in a podcast today asking whether Max Duggan was coming back next year because he does have an extra year. And I hadn't given it much thought. He's not a guy who jumps out to you as a big NFL draft, you know, prospect. But I would assume that, yeah, he probably would. I don't know, though. I don't know exactly how he's viewed in all that grand scheme of things. But he was very fortunate, and Garrett Riley was very fortunate that it all kind of came together this year to where, you know, a decision that they made early on that was unaffected by injury turns into a move where the guy who, you know, was the backup now turns into a Heisman Trophy finalist, and all of the pieces around him, just age-wise, were, you know, veteran, experienced guys. No matter where you looked, whether in the backfield or in the wide receiver room, tight end room, offensive line, it was a great timing for TCU. He was a great hire for Sonny Dykes, who also, you know, contributed obviously offensively as well to what they did. But yeah, Riley more than deserving, and a great year for TCU on that side of the ball, so it makes sense.
So a couple of other coaching, and these are assistant coaching comments. This is from Matt Zenitz, he covers Arizona State. They're going to hire a guy that has been everywhere. He's been at Texas. He's been at TCU. He's been at USC. Brian Carrington has been hired, Arizona State, with Dillingham as the new head coach, as their cornerbacks coach. He has been in many places. He's a very well self-hyped guy. As far as recruiting, but that's an assistant coaching position that ASU gets Brian Carrington from TCU.
Yeah, he's really well-known in recruiting circles, mostly from his time at Texas and with Tom Herman, and he did a lot of the logo. I don't know if it was I think everybody in college football is self-hype, so I don't think he's exclusively in that category, but he definitely fanned the flames at times during his time at Texas with the little emoji and some of the, you know, smack talking that happens between personnel guys and whatnot. So I remember him vividly from then. But, you know, that didn't work out, obviously, in the long run, and he moved along and eventually found himself at TCU. And, again, just great timing this year with their staff and all the pieces that sort of came together for this magical run that they're on. And, you know, obviously a guy who eventually wanted to be a position coach or, you know, be a coach and move up the ranks. I'm not sure how long that's been, you know, as part of his goal. Don't know him well enough to say for sure, but clearly he wasn't a recruiting lifer. He'll still have recruiting roles, but just not be his focus, which I can imagine a lot of guys are like, I'd rather be coaching than just do the recruiting thing all the time in this era. But yeah, I mean, he's been effective wherever he's been, and you know, is a good recruiting guy. But yeah, looking at a nice move up on the coaching staff ladder. So it'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah, recruiting is going to be one of those things like being a firefighter soon enough where it's like you're really going to have to want to do it. Like it's not something you can just be like, well, this is part of my job. You know, occasionally I'll put out a fire. Like, no, you better really want to do it and be committed to it because it is now going to be a thing that is not 365 days a year, but pretty darn close, you know, as far as keeping everybody happy and then like, you know, fostering – you know, helping foster business relationships and all those things to make sure that your players get NIL. Yeah, it's a much more involved job than just going in and slapping a kid on the back and going, you want to come to my university and play tailback?
It is 24/7, man. It is 24/7.
And am I correct in seeing that they also grab Rashad Samples or are about to grab Rashad Samples? Because if that's the case, then, you know, that's obviously some big boy recruiting moves from Kenny Dillingham. if he's pulling both of those guys. I mean, I think Carrington, obviously, it's not like we've been talking about the straight-up recruiter role. It's now getting him in a position to where I'm sure he'll want to, keep climbing up the ladder, but still he's going to be a recruiter as well. It's part of the deal no matter what you're doing. And so I think that's a great move on and off the field for Dillingham. But if he grabbed Rashad Samples as well, then I don't think there's any doubt that the Sun Devils are going to be poking around Texas a great amount here over the next few years.
Including DFW, where Samples has coached before, and also, I think, in the high school level, but also at SMU and elsewhere. Cincinnati hired Louisville defensive coordinator Brian Brown as its defensive coordinator. 39-year-old former Ole Miss defensive back, now will be with Scott Satterfield, and I saw a couple of notes on this. Bruce Feldman had this, but a couple of notes on this is that he will not be coaching Louisville in the bowl game that's now 11 days away. I did see some reaction from some Louisville fans that were like, and again, this is what fans do, that they felt like maybe Brown was someone that Satterfield was so loyal to that at times maybe it hurt him as far as because they wanted some turnover and changes, but he's taking him with him to Louisville.
I have a friend, Chad Haynes, I've made through the show here. He contacts me all the time. Chad's he's my Louisville historian, and he told me a funny story. He said that he's got a good buddy that's a big Cincinnati fan, and as soon as it happened, he said, "Thanks for the early Christmas present." It's just one of the weirdest things I've ever seen happen, where a coach coached his way out of the dungeon enough to where it was going to make it really hard for Louisville to fire him at 7-5, and then left, and no one is sad about it.
Yeah, I saw that story, and the immediate replies were all of like, okay, cool, whatever. I mean, like just complete apathy, and I don't know if all of that was, hardcore Cincinnati fans. A couple of them definitely were Cincinnati fans, and I feel for the Bearcats at the moment. Right now, it could be great here in a few months to where we're like, dang, we didn't need to feel sorry for them. I doubt it, but I don't know if it's lackluster. It's not a big move. I mean, it's very clearly not a huge swing of the stick. And if you are Cincinnati and you're hoping to follow up Luke Fickell in some grand fashion, this isn't it. I mean, this is a guy who's got a lot of experience and all that jazz. But yeah, I mean, basically he's a guy who the old place where he was at didn't want him anymore. And he didn't want them either, clearly. That's why he was out there flirtatious and whatnot. But it's a little bit of a letdown. Let him hire some guys and see how he does in the recruiting trail and whatnot. But there are some big expectations of Cincinnati. I mean, they were in the playoff last year. Last year they were in the playoff. The Big Ten came calling for Luke Fickell, and just wasn't the Big Ten school most people thought were eventually going to pull him away. But yeah, I mean, hopefully this works out for them in the long run, even though the initial returns are a little bit disappointing or a little bit of a letdown. And we see a strong Cincinnati enter the Big 12 next year with Scott Satterfield at the helm. I don't know how many people are banking on that, but I'm not going to put it past them either, so we'll see. But yeah, it's definitely a little bit of a letdown. There's no doubt about it, just based on all the Cincinnati stuff that I've been reading. I haven't seen too many people who are like, yes, this is awesome, and gung-ho about it.
Remember what Chad Brendel sent me. Man.
Yeah, but yeah. I mean, I also know how people reacted to, this is probably not the greatest comparison. Like when Matt Rule got hired, nobody knew who he was. People do know who Scott Satterfield is. So, it's not the exact same as when Rule came to Baylor and then ended up changing a lot of people's opinions ultimately. Too many people probably know Satterfield and, where he's coming from and why and all that. But, let him settle in and let's see what he can do. Obviously, he was recruiting well at Louisville. Maybe he can carry that over and that makes some bit of difference. But, yeah, Cincinnati needs a little shot of adrenaline.
All right. Now, I mentioned Garrett Riley as the Broyles Award winner for the best assistant coach in college football. The Eddie Robinson Coach of the Year finalists have been released. There's a name that on this list that surprised me. I voted earlier today. Sonny Dykes, these are all alphabetical order. Dykes, Elko, 8-4 Duke. Fritz, what a great year at Tulane. Harbaugh, hammered away, unbeaten at Michigan. Lincoln Riley with the flip of the switch and how he did it at USC. No matter if you're a fan of his, you love it. If you don't like him, but no, they did it. They flipped the switch too. Kirby Smart, it's hard to win when you're supposed to never lose. John Sumrall, Troy, they rolled past Coastal Carolina to win their conference title, and there's UTSA and a good friend of our show, Jeff Traylor, in that mix.
Yeah, who did you think should have been on it that wasn't?
Josh Heupel.
Yeah, that is kind of surprising.
Now, again, I have a rule that it's my own, we do. All right, take somebody off the list. If I was gonna put Josh Heupel on the list, you can just, because there's 8 finalists, it's not 22. So if Josh Heupel is on the list, I have to take somebody off. And to me,
I'm taking off Lincoln Riley.
I would think that would be, not to be negative, but I think so. Because I think Harbaugh and Kirby Smart, with teams that were supposed to win and they did, then Harbaugh validated last year. Smart, they had some things they had to deal with all the players graduating. So I would then probably substitute then. But I think Josh Heupel, despite how they finished, they still finished in the top 10. I think they did, would be on that list. I'm surprised he's not.
I think,
they finished right outside the playoff.
Yeah.
Remember, they finished, there was a whole thing with them in Alabama, outside the top 4.
I would think a lot of people are going to say Kirby Smart because, he's the best coach and the best team, coming back, whatever. But it's hard to maintain that, man. I mean, that deserves recognition when you have a run like they're on. I mean, they've lost 1 game of the last 30 or so that they've played. So, to me,
I don't think you need to justify Kirby Smart being on a Coach of the Year list. I mean, if somebody wants to argue against him because he's got all the talent or whatever, how did he get that talent? Well, staff did. How did he get the staff? I mean, the dude's got his hand in everything. So I don't think there's really much of a debate between the odds-on dominant favorite in the college football playoff and, big-time number 1 or the team that just got shellacked in the Pac-12 championship game. I don't feel bad saying Lincoln Riley could be off that list in place of somebody else as deserving. If we have to throw somebody off the life raft, he's who I'd throw off, but I'm not saying he had a bad year by any means. But, that's a pretty easy call to me compared to those other guys and what they did.
All right, so those are the